When Anko was first introduced, I think we all had pretty high hopes for her. She was the student of Orochimaru, the main villain for all of Part 1. In any other series, Anko would have had a pretty important and recurring role. Instead, none of this potential was ever really realized, and Anko was left as just another background character in an ever-increasing cast. Kishimoto seemed to have similar thoughts, considering all the way back in 2003, he said that Anko was his favorite female character thanks to her complicated relationship with Orochimaru. That makes it increasingly more bizarre how Anko steadily got sidelined over the course of the series. This is a pretty big shame because I think Anko could have been a much bigger part of the story than she ended up being. My name is Hoodie Song, this is Kato, and let's talk about one of the most underrated and underutilized characters in all of Naruto. Anko always admired Orochimaru. In a village where there was no end of shinobi to look up to, Anko looked up to a ninja that most people feared. Orochimaru is one of the most secretive and enigmatic people in the series, yet Anko actually earned some semblance of his trust, which is how she came to learn some of his own techniques, such as the hidden shadow snake hands. He even went so far as to share his plans with her for immortality and ended up making Anko the first real test subject for his new curse mark. This is a level of trust Orochimaru has really only shown to two other people, Kabuto and Sasuke. Whatever his real plans might have been, Orochimaru had clearly misjudged her. Anko wasn't easily seduced by these promises of power. Seeing the cost of the curse mark, Anko rebelled and refused to follow her sensei any further. Now, he could have killed her as easily as spawning a fly, but considering she was 1 in 10 to survive the curse mark experimentation, she was a valuable research subject, and so he kept her alive. What he did instead of killing her was alter her memories, making her believe that he had cast her aside because of her own failings and not anything he had done. Not long after that, Orochimaru's sins were found by Hiruzen and he was forced to escape the village. With her twisted memories, Anko saw all of this as her own fault. She had let her sensei go down a dark path, and it was supposed to be her who would one day end him. Ironically, pretty much all of Orochimaru's former friends felt this exact same way. After that, the first time we saw Anko was during the Chunin exams. Even a decade later, I still remember her grand entrance in the written exam. She was the exact opposite of Ibiki, loud and brash, and considering her brief interaction with Naruto and a disguised Orochimaru, it was safe to say that she had a pretty impactful introduction. It was during the Forest of Death exam that we saw the most of Anko that we probably saw in the entire series. Because during this exam, the Hidden Leaf found bodies on bodies of massacred ninja, all bearing the MO of her former master. Now, the rational thing here would have been to halt the exam, or at least go into the Forest of Death with the right backup. Anko, still having that chip on her shoulder, chose to go in alone. Whether it be by fate or bad luck, she did stumble on Orochimaru. This is the man Anko had been trying to hunt down for years. This was more or less the sole reason she was even here to begin with. But unfortunately for her, the gap between them hadn't bridged. It had only widened. Anko used the Twin Snake's Mutual Death Jutsu. This technique, as the name implies, kills both the user and the target, which shows just how desperate Anko was to kill Orochimaru. Unfortunately, it was just a shadow clone, and Orochimaru subdues her by preying on the curse mark, a cruel reminder of her past with her sensei. If that wasn't enough, then Orochimaru taunted her, stating that he was only here for someone else. He asks Anko if she's jealous, and perhaps some part of her was. At one point, she was his star pupil, and while he was obviously a sinister monster, it's hard to take back all those years where she would have thought of him as an actual mentor. Realizing that Sasuke is who Orochimaru is truly after, she tries to get him removed from the exam. But at this point, it was too late. He had been cursed with the same mark that she had. Unlike Anko, who was able to resist the temptation of power, Sasuke was different. He needed power. He craved it, and Anko could only watch, both helpless and partially fascinated, as Sasuke tapped into that power during the preliminaries. You'd expect this to be the beginning of Anko's role in the story. One could imagine an alternate universe where maybe she mentors Sasuke to control this power. Or at the very least, you could imagine her attempting that and him resisting. There are a lot of beats that Kakashi has later on with Sasuke that you could kind of imagine Anko doing the exact same. But in reality, the end of the Chunin exams was the last time Anko had a really relevant role in the story. Even during the actual invasion of Konoha by Orochimaru and the Sand Village, Anko really didn't do much. But when the manga canon is lacking, anime filler has a unique opportunity to fill in the details. In one such filler, Anko was assigned on a mission to the Land of the Sea, leading a team of Naruto, Ino, and Shino. I know, it's a very bizarre mashup. This is the place where Anko got her first seal, and likely the place where Orochimaru first tampered with her memories. During the course of the mission, Anko stumbles into the lab where she and Orochimaru had worked, regaining her memories. And it was at this point that Anko realizes that she hadn't been abandoned by Orochimaru, but that she abandoned him. This is very important. A big part of Anko's obsession was that she had been tossed aside, that she hadn't been good enough. While I'm sure a big motivation for Anko had been to bring Orochimaru to justice in some grand heroic sense, surely just as big a part was proving to him that he was wrong, that he'd misjudged her. Now she could be free of those feelings and cast them aside, knowing that had she decided to stay with him, he might have actually wanted her. It's the difference between being broken up with or breaking up with someone. While this is filler and should be taken with a grain of salt, the idea of Anko being given some sort of emotional arc or salvation is something that is nice to think about. After part 1 and going into Shippuden, Anko led a team assigned to find Kabuto. Their search does prove successful, mostly thanks to Kabuto leaving behind the bodies of ninja he killed. Of course, Anko pieces it together that Kabuto is actually leading them to something, and they find out that when they stumble into what they think are the Akatsuki headquarters. They discover a small army of white Zetsu under Tobi's control. Anko sends her team back to report everything we've learned, and just like in the Forest of Death, Anko heads off into danger alone. There, she's found by Kabuto and a fight breaks out. Unfortunately for Anko, the former protege is no match for the current, and Kabuto manages to poison her. However, he doesn't kill her. Instead, he uses her cursed seal energy to strengthen his Ito Tensei during the war. This is the last we see of Anko until Kabuto is finally defeated by Itachi and Sasuke later on. Sasuke, wanting to see Orochimaru, releases the fragment of his soul still trapped inside Anko's curse mark, and then they just leave her there, lying unconscious. If that doesn't summarize the bizarre underutilization of her role in the story, then I don't know what does. Anko had immense potential as a ninja, that's why she came into Orochimaru's sights to begin with. However, after her experiences with the Snake Sannin, it's heavily implied that she knowingly or unknowingly held back her own growth. And Boruto didn't treat the character much better. Anko became an ordinary instructor at the Ninja Academy. Her only real win in perhaps the entire series thus far was taking out the Ino Shikacho trio during the graduation exam. For a woman who was the student of a Sannin, it's safe to say that Anko was never even close to living up to what she could have done. In any other series, Anko wouldn't have been sidelined like this. Even during my first time watching the show, I fully expected Anko to be a relevant and important character moving forward, but it simply never happened. There are a couple reasons for this, starting with Anko herself. Despite being someone Orochimaru was interested in, Anko wasn't even a full Jonin by the time the series began. She was a special Jonin, ninja who are exceptional in only one area, but who fall too short in others to be considered full-fledged. But it's weird to imagine why this would be the case. Why is the student of a Sannin so limited in power? Why are they now just teaching at an academy instead of going on important and dangerous missions? Probably the most logical reason for why Anko got sidelined is that she shares too many similarities with Kabuto. While their exact motivations and arcs aren't the same, you could probably argue that two proteges of Orochimaru is kind of overkill. Regardless, I don't think it would have been too hard to give Anko a bigger role. Even if Anko was just meant to be a supporting character, she could have at least been more relevant whenever Kabuto or Orochimaru were brought up, if at the very least as a side note. Instead, she was more or less ignored, if not forgotten. Anko never lived up to what she could have been, and I think that is one of Naruto's biggest sins. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on that notification bell. Before I go, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the incredible patrons over at patreon.com/KatoYT. We're super active in our patron Discord server, occasionally throwing some late night anime and movie watch parties, so if that's something you're interested in, pledge just a single $1 to get an invite. You can also follow us on Twitter at KatoBeyond or my personal Twitter at hoodie_rights. Links to everything will be in the description. Again, my name is Hoodie Song, this is Kato, and thank you for watching.